Over the past couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to spend a week with both the Honda Civic Type R and the GR Corolla. And it's been two very exciting weeks because I love both of these cars, because it is some cars that feels old school and has that old mechanical feel to it that Honda and Toyota decided to put in production. And that is a very rare thing today. So in this video, what we're gonna do here, talk about both these designs and my experience with them, and let you know which one I would buy and why. Before we jump into Photoshop and have a look at we're of course gonna compare the design from a front, side, rear, the interior, and I'm gonna let you know what I would like to change on both of these designs and so on, overall what I think of them. Before we do that, let's have a look at some of the spec and text. Starting with the Honda Civic Type R. It's a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder putting out 315 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque, and this is connected to a 6-speed manual transmission. It is front-wheel drive, and this is a I wouldn't call it a problem, but I would love to have it in all-wheel drive, because having 315 horsepower, as I talked about in my review of it, you can go and check out both the GR Corolla review and the Civic Type R review on the Sketch Monkey channel. I'm gonna link those down in the description. But when I floored it, 315 horsepower to the front wheels, even though it does have a limited slip differential, you can feel the front end shake a bit and struggling for grip. I did not have that problem in the GR Corolla. So you do have a 6-speed manual front-wheel drive, as talked about, 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds. Fuel economy comes in at 22 city, 28 highway, pretty decent. And the pricing for this base price is $44,000. Now looking at the GR Corolla, you have a turbocharged 1.6-liter 3-cylinder. It's only a 3-cylinder, and if you ever get a chance to drive the GR Corolla, it doesn't feel like a 3-cylinder. It definitely feels like a 4-cylinder, and they packed 300 horsepower in a 3-cylinder. Yes, it does have a turbo. You can barely hear the turbo when you're stepping on it. I wish it had a little bit more turbo noise, but it's still connected to a 6-speed manual transmission. And the good news here is that we do have all-wheel drive. And what I love about the GR Corolla is that you do have limited slip differentials on both the front and rear axle, so you can actually adjust how much power you want to send to the front and rear axles. If you want to have it be more front wheel bias, you have 60-40 power to the front, or if you want to have it in drift mode or a bit sportier mode, you put it into 30-70, so 70% of the power goes to the rear wheels. So you have 0 to 60 compared to the Civic, 5.2 for the Civic, 4.9 for the GR Corolla, even though it has 15 horsepower less, but it also weighs just over 3,000 pounds. It's a very light car. Fuel economy comes in at 21 city, 28 highway, and the price for the GR Corolla, and there actually are a lot of them for sale right now, for this base price of around $37,000. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let's have a look at this design of course, both the Honda Civic to the left and we have the GR Corolla to the right. So starting with the Honda Civic, what I love that Honda did here with this design is just how it feels like the Civic grew up. The previous generation, that was completely over stylized. It felt like they had a bunch, 10-15 different designers working on the same car all at the same time. Everybody had a different opinion. All the opinions went into that car. Here though, they definitely cleaned everything up and it feels like it grew up. One detail that I love about this front end is this chamfer here. It's just a small detail, but this chamfer does so much for me because it feels like it has a nice starting point at the top of the key graphics, which are the grille down here, and then you have these beautiful headlights, which I do also love that you have this little dip in or like a poke into the body color in the very end, looking like an eyelid or something like that. Beautifully done. And lower section, we have a clear separation between the top part, the grille, and the headlights, and then you have the lower section down here being this massive intake, and everything here is functional except for this area. This has no functions in it, but it's totally fine. At least it's not the same level of fakeness of vents that we had in the previous generation. This still looks very, very clean and chiseled. We do have these fins inside of the grille as well, adding some more sportiness, and we also have a lower lip, which is all blacked out, making it hug the road beautifully in the front end. The daytime run lights here look like they have a very clear identity. We have this T-shape for the daytime run light, so you kind of know that this is a Honda when you see it at night. We also have the red specific logo for the Type Rs. Overall, it's just a very, very nice design compared to the previous generation, which I was not a fan of at all. This is completely different. I love this design. I think it's a beautiful overall design by Honda. Now, looking at the Corolla GR from a front view, we have, of course, a completely different package. This being a compact hatchback instead of this more elongated style that we have in the Civic. But both are 4 doors, and I love the design of this too. Even though this feels a lot more stylized than the Honda Civic over there, it's still stylized in a Toyota fashion, so they can have a bunch of lines going on here. It still has everything still has a clear connection to what's going on in the front end. And I do like that design philosophy from Toyota, because it means that the designers have a lot of fun designing these cars, because they can add a lot of styling cues in it as long as everything has a connection to it. What I love about the lines in the front of the Corolla is that every single line here points to the center logo, and it feels like everything is coming together and being pulled towards the front end of the logo right here in the center. We do have this massive grille in the middle, and everything here is functional. We do have some regulations that states that you need to have some sort of enforced section in the bumper area. You can see that this part is covered up, so behind here you probably have some metal bar going, because that's what you need to have. But underneath it, you see the intercooler down here completely open. You also have openings up here, and also openings right beside the logo up front. And even these vents that's not functional on the Honda is now functional on the GR Corolla. So everything in the front end is functional. We have big headlights, and I do love how dynamic these are. They look very sporty and sort of aggressive, not too aggressive, because it's still a Corolla, so you can take it easy with the angry vibe of the front end and still have a bit more of a fun front end. Some details I want to change here is to make this line just go straight into this corner and not have this triangle here of body color. I also want to make these a little bit more dynamic and have them be sort of like this, the outline 40, so we have more of a triangular shape to add some more interest in that area. Now, coming around to the side view here of the Honda Civic Type R, and just look at how clean this is. It's only about an inch longer than the previous generation. However, when you look at it, it definitely looks like it's a lot longer than the previous generation. So how they accomplish that, if you look at this hood section, it goes almost straight out from the A-pillar. It doesn't have this curvature like we have in the previous generation, and they also moved this area. So you see the point where the A-pillar meets the body right here. They moved this back just a little bit, and what that makes is it elongates the hood and also creates a greenhouse that sits a little bit further back than it did in the previous generation. And these small changes creates this illusion that this is a much longer car than the previous generation. We have a nice line at the bottom right here, 19-inch wheels instead of 20s like we had in the previous generation. I do think this design specifically works great with the black wheels, because everything else, the side mirrors, the trim around the windows, the big beautiful wing in the rear end, everything else is black, has the same gloss black feeling, and also this side skirt in the bottom. So I do think this works well, having actually black wheels in this case for the Civic Type R. I would like to see it maybe in some bronze wheels. I think that would look fantastic as well. It would also be cool to see what this would look like if we redesign this into a 2-door rear-wheel drive coupe. Now, looking at the hatchback of the Corolla, GR Corolla here, and as you can see, we still have the big styling features from Toyota with this line up here. We have another line here at the bottom, and then of course we have this big beautiful wide body kit on the GR, which I love that they put on this, because what that does, it makes it feel like a rally car. However, they did something fantastic with this body kit. Instead of just adding some more pieces on here, you can see that this line up here that is part of the normal hatchback Corolla, it has the exact same line like we have in the body kit, and then you have all these lines in the body itself cutting into the body kit pieces itself. So what that does, it feels like the designers put a lot of effort into making this wider body feel like a part of the original design, and I love that with this design. Same goes for this very functional air vent that we have in the front fender, but you can clearly see that this is a completely different package than we have on the Civic Type R. This is clearly a more of a traditional, I would say, a hatchback black design, but I love what Toyota did here with this design. It's just a super clean and fun design. I also love the 18-inch wheels because they look very clean with this multi-spoke design that we have here. I love styling like this, simple wheels, and as you can see, they're also black here, which seems to be a huge trend right now to have black wheels. But the same goes for this GR Corolla. Usually I'm not a fan of black wheels because I can't see the spoke design and appreciate them because everything is so dark. But in this case, everything else, just like the Honda, the side mirror, the graphic around the greenhouse, we don't have this big spoiler up here like we have on the Circuit and the, I think just the Circuit edition, which I think is something that I would definitely add to my GR Corolla, but everything else is black, so the wheels kind of tie everything together in a very nice way, and it's a super clean design. And most of all, it's a fun design, and this is what I want to see come back into car design, to let designers have some more fun, not just focus on the engineering part and focus on making a soap bar design. How much range can we get if we just shave off this wide body kit here and make it completely flush and boring? This is what I want to see in an enthusiast car. Now, coming around to the rear end, the 3/4 rear end views of both these cars, this is definitely my favorite view for both of these cars. For one specific reason when it comes to the Civic Type R is this massive wing that we have here. It doesn't look cheap, this wing. I think this has a design and the organic feel that we have in this wing makes it feel like a much more expensive part than it probably is. And in addition to that, we also have this light bar in the middle. This is, I do believe that you have a brake light in this middle section. You can see just how thin the taillights are, and what this does is it just drags this design out and make it feel even wider by dragging the taillights out to each side. We have a very clean integrated bumper, traditional looking bumper that I love to see in modern cars. We also have these intakes which are actually not functional. They only house the reflector light, but it still has a clear connection to what's going on in the front end graphics with this area that we talked about earlier. And of course, all the way down here we have a big black diffuser in addition to these 3 pipes. So for this generation, what they did is they put the big pipe in the middle and the smaller ones on the side. If you look at the previous generation, they had the opposite layout. So you have the big ones outside and then you have the smaller ones in the middle. So that's kind of something that they just fiddled around with and said, hey, let's just make something different for this generation. Overall, this is by far my favorite view of the Honda Civic Type R, even though the front and the side still look gorgeous. I just think the plantedness of the rear end has something special to it, and that goes, of course, for the GR Corolla as well. Specifically, since we have a look at just how much wider this body kit makes the GR Corolla. And honestly, when I drove this, it was one of the most fun cars I've ever driven. Even though the base price is just $36,000, it was such a fun car to drive. Listen to that little 3-cylinder. And I do believe that a lot of that has to do with the weight, and then you have just the drivetrain, 300 horsepower, even though it is just a 3-cylinder. It was a super fun car to drive. You can see that we do have the same philosophy here like we have in the front end. Like all of these lines, we do have a small chamfer going around the rear window. If you just continue these lines, you can see that everything points, again, like we have in the front end. Everything just points to the Toyota logo in the middle. Further down, we do have a big, massive black diffuser again on the Corolla as well. We have almost the same type of philosophy down here like we have in the Honda Civic Type R. And we have this integration of the exhaust pipes. Some detail that I also love about the GR Corolla, and almost an oval pipe in the middle. And then you have 2 solid round pipes on each side, looking absolutely fantastic. However, there's one thing I would like to add here. You see how all of these things down here at the bottom, there is a lot going on in the bottom, and there is not a lot going on in the top. And that is the main reason why I need to have the Circuit Edition wing up here to kind of balance everything out that goes on in the lower section and have some sort of element up top that balance all that goes down in the middle and balance that out a little bit. But look at the wheels here, just fantastic rally inspired wheels with this simple design. Now last but not least, we need to have a look at the interiors of these two. And honestly, I'm not sure which one I prefer the most of these two interiors. If I had to go with one, it's probably going to go to the Honda Civic Type R, because I just love this line that we have going across the entire dash. I do love this old school integration of the gauge cluster. The screen, I feel, felt a little bit more high quality in the Honda Civic Type R than it did in the very gloss plastic with these bars or edges that we have going outside of the screen in the GR Corolla. But it was never something that I cared about because I was having too much fun driving these cars. If we talk about the transmission, that 100% has to go to the Honda Civic Type R. A lot tighter shifts. It felt like the GR Corolla shifts were a little too light. Did have more play in it, but it was still a very good transmission on the GR Corolla. I also love these red seats that we have on the Honda Civic Type R. They just look fantastic, and I'm glad that Honda decided to do something bold like this and make the seats and the carpeting all red in the Civic Type R. The great news here is there is really nothing wrong about any of these interiors. Both of them have a housing for the gauge cluster. Both of them thankfully still have climate control settings. We have dual zones in the Civic Type R, while we still have a single zone or one zone in the GR Corolla. But since it is such a small car, I don't really care to have dual climate control settings in the GR Corolla. So now, which one of these two would I personally buy? Yes, the Honda Civic is a little bit more expensive, $44,000 compared to 36 or 37, actually quite a lot more expensive. But if I were to buy one today, it was 100% go to a GR Corolla. And the reason being, I do love this design. I think it's a little bit more of a special feel to the GR Corolla. It feels more unique than the Civic Type R. But the main reason is that it has all-wheel drive, which I think the Civic definitely needs when it has 315 horsepower to the front wheels. If you drive the Civic Type R and you floor it, you notice that the front end is really struggling to steer and put all that power down. The GR Corolla is gripping like nothing else when you put it in, when you have it in the standard all-wheel drive. None of these cars are really refined cars. They're pretty harsh ride. You hear some creaks and stuff in the interior sometimes. But the thing is, that's a positive to me, because these reminds me of the old cars I used to have, the 200SX and cars like that when I was a teenager, and that is the feeling that I don't really mind in new cars. I actually prefer to have it like this instead of the feeling like I'm driving a simulator. But if I were to buy one, it's gonna be the GR Corolla.